Welcome everyone to another episode of the Black Beauty Activist Podcast. My name is Dr. Tameka Ellington. For those of you that may not know me, I am an educator, empowerment speaker, and a lover of all things Black culture. In today's episode, we will be discussing the year anniversary of the hair relaxer lawsuit. As we all know, beauty is very important to Black women and has been connected with the requirement to straighten our hair since the enslavement era and bleaching our skin since the early 1900s. And we have done this in order to fit into society's square box of westernized beauty standards. We've done this in order to be accepted, in order to acclimate ourselves, acculturate ourselves into dominant society. And it's become a situation where we have this as a way of life. And straightening our hair has been the ideal type of beauty. There's no denying that. But now we're talking about the ramifications that go along with that. Is it going to be to the detriment of Black women to continue to straighten their hair and even in some ways, even risking their lives? I just read a story that was released in 2014 out of Salvador, Brazil. A 36-year-old woman named Maria Lopez de Silva died after applying salon line hair relaxer, which contained guanidine, I think that's how you pronounce it, and hydroxide. This issue with Black women's health and hair relaxers is not new. It's just fresh on our minds now because we've had this big lawsuit that surfaced where thousands of people have come forward who've been suffering from some type of ovarian cancer, fibroids, tumors, other issues that women have been dealing with. And now so many people are coming forward. And so it's right on the surface for us today. And so the guests that I have, I'm really honored to have these two ladies with me. Both of these women are in the beauty industry, but in different ways in the beauty industry, from two different perspectives, two different spectrums of the hair industry and beauty industry. One woman is a hair scientist and another is an influencer. I chose these women because I really wanted to have a well-rounded conversation. Many of you all, if you've been listening to my podcast for some time now, you know how I stand, you know what my feelings are about Black beauty. But I really wanted to have this conversation not be one-sided. I wanted the conversation to be much more well-rounded so that we can get a better perspective of what Black women have to look forward to in regards to these challenges that we're facing. So let's go ahead and jump into the conversation. I'm going to bring in my two guests. Hi, ladies.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for being with me. It's a pleasure, activist, to introduce you all to Dr. Crystal Porter. Dr. Porter has been on the show before, so she may look familiar to you. And she and I have done several projects together. So if you've been following me, you've probably seen me on her podcast that she also hosts. And then Toni Bryanne. And I found out about Toni Bryanne because I was doing some research, and you had an episode on your YouTube TV that stated something to the effect of Black women hate their natural hair, which caught my attention, which made me look further. And I love the perspective that you gave on that particular episode of your show, and thought that it would be great to add you to this conversation so that we can have a more well-rounded conversation about this. And so Dr. Crystal Porter, I'm going to read you all's bio so everybody can learn a little bit more about your journey and what you contribute to the beauty industry. So Crystal Porter is a hair scientist and owner of Main Insights, Inc., where she conducts research studying the hair and scalp of people of African descent. Dr. Porter is passionate about debunking myths and empowering others to properly care for their hair. As a former cosmetic scientist with Unilever and L'Oreal, Dr. Porter was able to conduct research and study the biophysical characteristics of hair in pigmented populations. Not only has she studied, but she's also contributed to to the scientific community by authoring scientific journals, book chapters, and delivering presentations regarding ethnic hair. Dr. Porter earned her bachelor's degree in biochemistry from Chicago State University and her doctorate degree from Missouri University of Science and Technology in physical polymer chemistry. Armed with extensive knowledge and experience, she has created a patented process that helps professionals understand their clients' hair so that they can provide customized hair care solutions. All right, Dr. Porter. And Toni Bryanne is an accomplished content creator that has accumulated over 200,000 supporters across all her platforms. Toni's passion in media was truly cultivated since earning her Bachelor's of Arts degree from Loyola University in Maryland in spring of 2022. I'm glad that you specified that because I'm sure you know that there's a Loyola also in Chicago.
Yes. Yeah, there's multiple.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And so she has used her knowledge from her degree into content in which she informs and inspires and educates people on situations affecting the world today, from dating to pop culture to issues in the Black community. Toni makes it her mission to properly research and execute all information she has provided on her platforms. And like I said before, that was one of the reasons why I invited her to be on, because the several shows that I watched where she was talking about various aspects of Black beauty, particularly Black hair, they were very thorough. She gave some great feedback, some great tips that Black women can use. And so I thought that she would be an excellent addition to this conversation. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. And so I hope you all are ready. We're going to jump right into this conversation. And so I would like to know, how old were you when you got your first relaxer? So I know for sure, like my first chemical process was when I was in kindergarten. That was my first chemical process. So when did you all get your first hair relaxer?
So I'll go first, I suppose. I actually never have had a hair relaxer.
Really? Okay.
My mother was against it for us
Okay.
because she had a hair relaxer when she was growing up, and she didn't want us to have anything against our hair when we were younger. So that was one main reason why we never did. But I did get my hair straightened for the first time. I believe it was my first day of kindergarten. I got my hair straightened, got a little roller set. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. Dr. Porter.
And I was either 13 or 14. And my family was not really excited about it. I wanted something different. So I wasn't necessarily trying to conform or anything like that. Or at least I don't think I was. I just was tired. I was always the kid with the cornrows. I always had beautiful cornrows, and people would always ask me, where did you get your hair done? But people kept asking me, do you do anything else other than wear braids? And I was like, yeah, I want something different. So I thought I could have versatility, because if I ever wanted to get the braids, I could. But if I ever wanted to wear it out and, just have ease of manipulation, I wanted to have that. So
yeah. And so in your families, was there a conversation about like this rites of passage, or what was the conversation about hair relaxers in your family? For the most part, I know, Toni, you were talking about your mom was against it, but like amongst your family, I know you heard other women in your family talking about it. Yeah.
Other women in my family, for the most part, from my understanding, they had relaxers. I would say maybe like just my aunt, her daughter as well did not have a relaxer, but I saw relaxers, and I also saw the effects of relaxers of the people in my family. And I was glad that I didn't have one. I was content with just doing the hair straightening if I did do anything. But yeah, my immediate family, like living with my mother and even my father was huge he loves afros to this day. He's like, why don't y'all wear your hair in afros? And I'm just like, it's a lot to maintain at this point. But yeah, in the immediate household, my mother was very strongly against it. And I'm glad, because when you're younger, you are looking to, you're trying to adhere to the beauty standards of what you see and what everyone will consider to be beautiful. So I am glad that at that age, being so young, that it wasn't pushed upon me. Or I couldn't even fold under the pressure because my mother wasn't allowing it.
Dr. Crystal?
We didn't have any conversations at all about it. My mom wore her hair natural. She wore the quote unquote Jerry curl because that is, telling my age, but yeah, that's the generation I came from.
Yeah.
And she had it relaxed as well. But every time she had it relaxed, it would always like fall out. And so she would either wear it with the curl or natural, but
Mhm.
no conversations at all about it. I was able to,
Mm.
as whatever age I decided I was going to wear it relaxed, I wore it, and yeah, it was no conversation behind it at all. And
Mm.
I've actually ruined my hair with it because I would go swimming and I would wear a cap and I would rinse it out effectively. And so it would all break off. And, so
Mhm.
I've had all kinds of challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to ask you guys about that. That's going to be my next question because in my book, I have a book called Textures: The History and Art of Black Hair, and a book that's my latest book. It's called Black Hair in a White World, and in that book, I talk about several hair traumas that I've had over the years, and being in the pool with a chemical straightener in my hair and then waking up the next morning without any hair is definitely one of those traumas that I face. So I'm right there with you. So have you all ever had any traumas surrounding your hair that you can recall?
Yeah, I personally can't say I've had any distinct traumas, but I will say I did compare my hair a lot to when I was in like grade school to the girls that had either straight hair or like looser curl textured hair.
Mm, mm,
So that was like one thing that I would say was a little there was trauma attached to it because you saw the type of attention that those girls would get. And that was something that would always kind of consume me. And I couldn't wait to get older and be able to experiment and try different styles. So that's like one piece of trauma. Thankfully, once again, my mother, she took care of our hair from the very jump. So there wasn't anything traumatic that I could particularly do until I became an adult, but nothing. I'm pretty safe when it comes to my hair, even now. I just got into like wearing more like straight hair, sew-ins, whichever, like literally a year ago. But yeah, there wasn't anything that there's not anything I could directly link to like this traumatic experience that has happened. But yeah, I guess going to Dominican hair salons, I did notice that my hair texture would loosen. So ruining my hair through that's one thing because like their goal is to just keep it straight, not to keep it healthy. So that is
right.
the thing I did that I would say is like traumatic. But I now look at it as traumatic. Back then I was like, I don't care as long as it's straight.
Wow. Wow. And you had mentioned something about the fact that you saw what relaxers did to other people's hair in your
Yes.
family. Okay,
Yeah.
so can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I had my one cousin, she had a relaxer. I remember her hair was always very frail and thin.
Mm,
And that was like the main example that I saw a lot. And then even girls in school, the ones that did have relaxers, there's a look that a hair, whenever you have a relaxer that you're not taking care of your hair, there's a look that it has. It's more like a choppier look. And when I would see it, I was like, okay, that's why I don't have a relaxer because it doesn't look
mhm.
healthy. Though it's straight, it doesn't look healthy. And you can
Yeah.
see that the trauma that comes with putting a relaxer in your hair. So that was like, those were like prime examples that I saw. And then my cousin finally decided to go all natural. Like now her hair is beautiful. She's still natural to this day. I think she became natural around like 12, 13. Just
Okay.
chopped it all off, did the big chop. And yeah, she hasn't gone back since. But I did see that was like one thing because she couldn't do certain styles and maneuver certain styles that my sister and I could and my god sister could.
Dr. Crystal.
Wow. Well, I already said that, had to cut my hair. That was traumatic because it was my senior year.
Mm,
So my senior
Ooh.
pictures, my hair was like maybe an inch long. And
Oh
I mean,
my
I never had
gosh.
really long hair, but if I can think about like things that made me feel emotional about my hair, it would have to be when my cousins would compare length. So it wasn't necessarily
Mm,
whether it was straight or curly, it was length and it was okay if you have good hair. And it's so funny because in my family, we say, and I mean, it's a horrible thing to say, but it was like being young, you don't really care. But it's like, ooh, you got the eyes, but I got the hair, or vice
mm,
versa. And so
right.
it was either you got the hair that wasn't as tightly coiled, or you got the quote unquote eyes. And so it's
Mm.
pretty ignorant, but that's what it was.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Crystal has hazel eyes for you guys that can't see that, right? Your eyes are like a light brown color.
Correct.
Mhm. Which is interesting, right? Because then again, that's getting us away from the typical Afrocentric beauty standards that we typically see, right? For them to say, oh, you got the eyes, you know?
Exactly. But what's interesting is because people see that characteristic, they don't believe how tightly coiled my hair is. So I'm able to
Like those two
maintain
things
it.
are supposed to go together.
Exactly. And
Wow.
so they feel because I have certain characteristics that it's supposed to go with, you know, a looser curl. And because it doesn't look like it's natural and it's not tight to my scalp, the assumption is that I don't have to deal with the tightly coiled or, you know, pain or time that it takes to spin. I mean, because if I comb my hair and it gets too tangled, it is painful.
Yeah.
And because of the degree of curl, it takes me a little bit longer to do my hair just because I have to manage that. And it is what it is.
Yeah, and that dynamic that you were just talking about with eyes being associated with hair texture, we also oftentimes associate skin color with hair texture.
Yeah.
And so people automatically think that if you're lighter skinned, if you're really light, you know, you really should have straighter hair. You should not have, you know, kinky curly hair if you have very, very fair skin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which we know is not the case. I mean, we come in all colors, all textures, you know, everything. So since the lawsuit, and this lawsuit first came out, at least the bigger surface lawsuit where it had a lot of publicity, came out about October of 2023 regarding L'Oreal's lawsuit that Ben Crump had filed for Missouri woman Jenny Mitchell. And it basically then had this windfall. After that lawsuit was filed, there was a windfall that happened, and thousands of other women started coming forward and also filing a suit or whatever. And so, what are your overall thoughts about this? So, we've been now in this lawsuit situation for a whole year. I'm telling you, every time I go on social media, I always see some kind of ad that says, if you've, you know, suffered from, you know, ovarian cancer, fibroids, or whatever, about, you know, with your hair, you know, contact such and such number. You know, it's really interesting how now it's becoming it's this thing where people are like trying to cash in almost, you know, to see what they can get. So it's interesting. So what are your thoughts about the lawsuit?
So, and are you asking, like, is it a form of, like, do you think there's like an agenda being set right now? Is that what your opinions
I
were?
mean, just any thought that you have, whatever
Yeah.
whatever your thoughts are.
Yeah. So with this lawsuit, I feel like it's honestly necessary in terms of the fact that we never, as Black women, especially in the, I would say, like, perms got popular, what, 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
Women were never taught, Black women primarily were never taught the implications of how it could damage their hair. They're just trying to adhere to the European beauty standards, and they're just trying to get a job, be treated respectfully, even find a partner. So I am for the lawsuit. I think it's necessary because, especially when there's so many women that are linking getting perms to having cancer. I think it's important to happen right now. And as always, when one person speaks out about anything that has happened, a multitude of people come out, because I think they're like, wait, that happened to me, or something similar. Or I didn't think this was a big thing, but now I see this woman came out, or this person came out, and now it is a big thing. So it could be a sort of like people trying to get a cash grab, but if that is the case, I feel like it should be something that Black women get, because a lot of us were forced into getting perms and into trying to change our hair texture because we were told that who we are naturally was not beautiful enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dr. Crystal.
Yeah, so I definitely understand the pressure that a lot of Black women had to conform, or they were made to do it. You know, their jobs were threatened. So I do see that I see that side of it. If I put on my scientific hat and I look at the research that was done, the author said that there was an increased risk.
Yeah.
for uterine cancer, or the latest one, because they also said it for ovarian cancer and they also said it for breast cancer as well. But the latest research about the increased risk of ovarian cancer, I think when you look at what it takes to prove that that is the case, it's going to be very difficult to prove, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because there's so many, we call it co-founder, or you have other co-founding factors, meaning there are other things in the environment that can cause it. There are other lifestyle choices that can cause it as well. So it's very difficult with the limited studies that have been done to definitively say that it was a cause and effect.
Yeah.
And so an increased risk doesn't mean, so as they say, correlation doesn't mean causation. You hear that all the time. And that is going to be hard to prove. But I think what Ben Crump and a lot of other attorneys are counting on is big companies with deep pockets wanting it to go away, and will pay it just to make it go, or pay something to make it go away.
Yeah.
That's my perspective. I don't know what direction anybody is going to go in, but I think it's going to be difficult. If it gets to the courts, it's going to be difficult to prove.
Yeah. Well, it's been now combined into a master litigation. And so all of those people that have come forward, now there's one big lawsuit case that's for the United States, right? And it's actually in Chicago. There's a judge in Chicago that's handling the big litigation case. But it's really interesting that I remember when it first came out last year, there were several people who were cosmetologists, people that are practitioners that actually do relaxers on people's heads. We're talking about the fact that this is like, it can't be true, like there's no way. And, they were talking about the fact that this lawsuit was like propaganda. And when you were talking about the fact that it was going to be hard for them to prove, one of the things that I saw was that the courts are asking for women's receipts. Did you buy this such and such relaxer? And if you did, we need to see the receipt. And that's going to be difficult too, because of course, many women go to the salon to get it done, right? So it's like, how are you going to trace that back? Are you going to have to bring your cosmetologist into the, courts and say what, for them to tell what kind of product they use and all these things, right? So for the practitioners, the cosmetologists, they've had a different, from what I've seen, the ones that actually practice putting hair relaxers in people's hair, they've had a different response to this, an adverse response, in my opinion. So what do you all think about that?
Yeah. So in terms of you saying, the first thing that came to my mind was with the whole receipts. That's clear as day, them trying to set up for failure. And I'm honestly not surprised. I can say I don't know what this is going to exactly lead to. If we're going to see if anyone that is joining this class action lawsuit is going to see any benefits or reap anything from it.
Right.
But I at least do think it starts a conversation now, and it's going to further lead people away from deciding to go get relaxers. Though I have been seeing a lot on social media that women are starting to go back to relaxers. There's been a lot of videos I've been seeing of fed up with my natural hair, I'm going back. Though, like you said, I've been seeing a lot of the commercials of there's a lawsuit going on. If you had a relaxer, you might be entitled to a compensation. But I don't know. I think in terms of it being propaganda, it could be a form of saying, oh, we care about you, but it's just a way to pretend that they do, but nothing's going to ever change. Because like I said, now it seems like history is repeating itself a little bit. Because I have been seeing a lot of women now transitioning back to what people would call the quote unquote dark side.
My background is in fashion, and I often talk about how fashion is correlated with hair and beauty, right? So if fashion is cyclical, then that also means that hair is cyclical too. And so over the past couple of years, you're absolutely right, Toni. Women have been going back to straightened hair. So when we think about when the natural hair movement first started, well, the very first one, now when we think about, okay, in the 1960s, 70s, when women and men were both wearing their natural hair, which typically was in the form of an afro, right?
Yes. Yeah.
20 years later, everybody's straightening their hair, right? Because now we have to get corporate jobs and it's required that we come in looking a certain way, right?
Exactly.
Okay, 20 years after that, the natural hair movement starts, right? And so now here we are, 2023, another 20 years, right? Now this thing is coming, it's coming back around.
Yeah.
And so we're on this pendulum swing. So my prediction is that in 20 years from now, we'll be back to natural hair again.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. And I so agree with you. I was just talking over that with my sister. I feel as if natural hairstyles and trying all that stuff out was very popular up until, I would say, it kind of was starting to get ruined in 2016, 2017, because a lot of the times, if you saw like the viral, at least in my generation, the popular girls that were, oh, okay, like I'm natural curly, they had the soft curls.
Yeah.
And a lot of the black girls or women of color in general that did not have the same curl texture, the same curl pattern, they were trying to make their hair adapt to it, but it's not going to. So you're watching hair tutorials. That's when YouTube was very popular when it came to the beauty community.
Yeah.
You're doing all this work. You're trying to make your hair look like who's the popular girls. And a lot of Black women just couldn't. And then they go to, I saw wigs started getting very popular. And wigs had their phase for a while. And now what I'm seeing is different concepts, like the sew-in is popular now. Women are now, because before people were like, okay, if I get a wig, I won't be like damaging my natural hair. So it'll be braided under, I'm protecting it still. So it's like, it's good. But now it's like, okay, I don't like the wig anymore. Now we're going to the sew-ins because it's like, okay, I want this, the wig looks too unnatural. And it is literally like patterns I can see. And I could even see it like within like myself. I told you, I was very into like the natural hairstyles and during that era, I loved trying different stuff. My sister even, I loved braids. I still get braids, but I definitely see the pattern of it cycling in and out.
Yeah.
Well, I want to go back to your question about how do we feel about the stylist saying, oh, no, it is not true, because I haven't met a stylist yet who has not stated that all clients don't behave the same or their hair doesn't behave the same. And there is too much research coming out now that shows that some people are just more susceptible to certain ailments, or they can't receive products or treatments the same way that others can. And so if you see that the hair is not as responsive from person to person, then why would it be so far-fetched to believe that some type of treatment or exposure to a particular product couldn't have any negative effects?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I don't understand how you can be in the profession and see those differences and say, oh, there are differences with one and not the other. Now, to say that it's causative, like I said, the verdict is still out. But as you know, and anyone who knows me, I'm always asking about the data. And so what we have so far is anecdotal data that something could be going wrong. And so now that we are armed with that information, now we really need to have what I call controlled studies.
Yeah.
To be able to understand, is there really something there? And
Yeah.
right now we don't know, but it does suggest. And so it may be that certain people are more susceptible. So it's up to us to figure out how we are going to demand that more research is done so that we can definitively know.
Okay, so do you believe that the research that was already done via the wasn't it the National Health
Sister study?
Yeah, what do you, I mean, you don't think that data was good enough to give us?
Unfortunately, no. So there are different types of studies. The study that they did is called an observational study.
Gotcha.
So they basically went back. So it wasn't designed to answer the question.
Gotcha.
They looked at past data to see if they could see some correlations.
Gotcha.
And so that's different than recruiting people and having your variables controlled. And, so you have independent and dependent variables. And so you have to have controls. And that was not the case with this particular study. So no, it wasn't good enough, but it wasn't designed to do that. It was just kind of we have this information. Let's see if there's something there.
Gotcha. Wow. So one of the questions that I know we should talk about is, even if we don't really have the data, and if there is a possibility that women can be caused harm from using hair relaxers, why is this information not put on our labels?
Yeah. Okay. Can I start and answer that question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the problem is that this information was not available. So what we knew is that when you put something caustic on your skin, you can suffer from atopic dermatitis, which is, your skin becoming red or inflamed, swollen, or and we've seen the chemical burns, right? So you could actually have tissue damage as a result. So they do have guidelines in terms of how you should use it, but once again, not everybody can tolerate the strength or the time, and so you have to leave it up to professionals or the person receiving the treatment to speak up and say, "Hey, I feel something isn't right."
Right.
And so there are guidelines, but up until recently, there was no really definitive or results to show that, other than the caustic effect, meaning dermatitis or suffering of a chemical burn, it wasn't really anything out there to say that, okay, here's something that you need to be aware of. Now, until we have data to put out there, and I believe if there was data to show that it was, harmful to health, it would be banned. No one would be able to sell it. So we just don't have the information out, but there are guidelines. But speaking about guidelines, one thing that I noticed when the young lady that Ben Crump brought out and said, "Hey, we're filing a lawsuit," one thing that she said, and of course, with me being in the industry, it set off all kind of alarms. She said something to the effect of she applied it like every 3 or 4 weeks or something like that. And that actually goes against the guidelines that
Absolutely
are
it does. Yeah, because it says 8 weeks, doesn't it?
It says 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
And so when you actually on national television state something that goes against how it was intended to be used, that in itself is like a mark against you.
Flag. Yeah, that's
and
a red
so
flag.
I was like, man, not only is it unfortunate that she suffered her health ailments and had cancer to deal with, she's also like kind of admitting that she didn't even adhere to the way that it was supposed to be used. But at the same time, we know that the public, and I don't want to say can't be trusted, but really can't be trusted to do what they're supposed to do when you have something as caustic as it is. And so you can put as many guidelines out there as you want, but I think we all know, those of us who have had relaxers, and I believe you have probably heard this as well, even if you don't have a relaxer, is you wait until it burns because you want to get it straight.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's the culture of what we did while getting our hair done. And so I'm really going to adhere to that? No, not when our end goal is to have the hair as straight as possible.
It looks like, Toni, you had wanted to say something about like the why isn't there any warning labels?
Yeah. So I definitely, like, from hearing from Dr. Crystal's perspective, in terms of that there weren't any guidelines, there was no knowledge towards the components of how negative the effects of a perm could be. But my question, like, towards that would be like, was that on purpose? Like, do they not care to put as much research into these things due to the fact that it was being marketed towards a group, at least for primarily in the United States, that already doesn't get enough attention and no one necessarily cares to do deeper research and figure out is it good or not? Because even the fact that I've heard the whole wait until it burns. I've heard that when it comes to like putting a perm in your hair, and I was always confused, like, why do you have to wait till it burns? But the fact that it even gets to that point, it's like, why are we selling this to people? And like, it was only a matter of time before we saw the negative effects. And no, it hasn't been confirmed or not, because we see that there are potential links of this being perms being linked to cancer. I kind of believe that there are some effects, because putting chemicals that harsh to your scalp, our scalp is very sensitive, is kind of unhumanly, that it's shocking that it was even advertised so much, and that so many Black women, not even just Black women, but women with coarser hair, have decided to use it and continue to. That's what I'm like questioning. I'm like, was it just a money grab? Because they knew how desperate a lot of women of color were to just adhere to, once again, the European beauty standards that we're constantly put and pressured into being a part of society of some sort, because American society is white society. So they knew that it would be a sellout, and any perm brand. That's why there were so many available.
Let me say this. When you were saying that American society is white society, any place where there has been some type of colonization is a white society. No matter, even if you're in Africa, if certain countries in Africa were colonized, which most of them were, there's going to be this undertone of white beauty is the right beauty, right? So that's the reason why we see a lot of our African sisters, wearing wigs, lightening their skin, all of these things. So this is not just a United States issue. This is an issue that is global. Like when I first started the conversation, I had said something about a woman in Brazil, supposedly after putting on the relaxer, it had some kind of adverse effect on her and she died from it. So this is not an issue that's just impacting women here in the United States. It's impacting Black women across the globe. Yeah. Dr. Crystal, you were about to say something.
So a couple of things. So it's almost as though it's believed that the big companies are the ones who, are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
I think I'm freezing. Oh, okay, good. So it makes it seem as though the big companies are the ones who put relaxers out on the market, and that actually is not true. Morgan Garrett is the one who is giving credit to having found what relaxers can do. And so he was a Black man.
It's about Garrett Morgan. Garrett Morgan. Yeah.
So he was a Black man. And then it wasn't commercialized for a very long time. People were just getting red level dye, egg, and they were doing what they needed to do to conk their hair.
Right.
So that was started. That was not started by the big corporate giants that sell relaxers. And so to think that that was intentional, that isn't necessarily true. And then the other thing that I can say, just from coming from corporate America and working with people who developed or who formulated these formulas, it wasn't intentional for the research not to be done, because a lot of research was put into it to the degree in which it could be done. Because Dr. Tameka, you and I had a conversation last time about the lack or the unwillingness of Black people to share information about themselves. And I understand why. I mean, so I'm not saying, hey, we got to do better. No, we have reason to not want our business or our data out there. So I get that. But The flip side of that is, how do you get an understanding of what's going on if we're not willing to
Right.
participate in studies and
Right.
to give up that information?
Right.
So it's not as black and white. And I don't want to sound like I am for, big business, but I do want to at least give food for thought about other things that need to be considered, because it's a huge gray area. It is not black and white.
Yeah. Well, when we look at the history of it, um, relaxers really did start to get popular in the 70s after,
Yes.
the Black Power movement. So like in the 1950s, when we actually had what was the real relaxer. So like Garrett Morgan's form of the relaxer still needed to have a straightening comb accompanied with it. So it was a product that you put on and you still had to have some kind of a straightening comb with it. And so we got to the 1950s, and a gentleman by the name of Jose Calva invented the first chemical that did, quote unquote, permanently straighten your hair. And so after that, Johnson and Johnson and other like not Johnson and Johnson, but
Johnson products.
The Johnson products,
Yeah.
they got into the mix, and then they also began making these products. And so really big corporations that are white owned corporations, I'm sure they probably didn't do it for harm's matter. They did it for profit matter.
Yeah.
They saw an opportunity to make a lot of money, right? And so they jumped on the bandwagon. Just like when we think about any of the Black natural hair products that's out on the market, the white corporations all have their version of, what they can use, like Pantene Royal Gold or something like that, right? That's supposedly meant just for Black people, right?
Yeah.
So they saw it as a money making opportunity, which also has historical data behind it, because one of the first companies, white companies, that started making money off of Black beauty was a company called Lucky Brown in the early 1900s. Lucky Brown produced bleaching creams as well as hair straightening tonics. And they called their company Lucky Brown because if you used their lightening and if you used their straightening, then you would be a lucky brown person because you could look more white. So, where do we go from here? What do you all think is the future of the Black industry, the Black beauty industry? Will beauty ever be disassociated with this idea of having to straighten your hair? Like, what do you guys think is going to be happening in the future?
I think similar to what we said before, as much as I want to say that it's hopeful, I just think history is going to continue to repeat itself. We see it time and time again. And I'm not exactly sure if there could be ever a time where perms don't exist, even if there is like this class action lawsuit that goes
Right.
ahead and people get money from it. I think that
Right.
it'll always be a big part of our culture and our society, just due to the fact that we're always told that whiter is better. And like similar to what you said, it's not just a United States problem. I understand that this happens in Asia, this is happening in Africa.
Absolutely.
We see it all the time, especially who's on the forefront whenever they advertise these areas.
Absolutely.
So I think the best hope is to continue educating on the matter and us having these discussions.
Yeah.
It seems like such a minuscule part to help heal the problem. It's something that can be done, because before no one was talking about it. Now that we do have these platforms like on social media where we see history, especially on TikTok, you see history of people discussing matters like the perm, where it came from, who originated it. People are being educated through that now. So the only goal, I think, is to just keep speaking about it. And hopefully we'll see what happens with this class action lawsuit. I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen with it, especially given the evidence that's going to be needed and just to prove that it's connected. It'll be interesting to see, but I definitely will be tuned in, and
I will too. Yeah,
sure, how it's going to turn out.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Crystal, what can Black women begin to do to decrease their chances of the negative impacts? So as Toni said, it's not going to be going anywhere anytime soon. Relaxers are not going to be leaving anytime soon. And so because Black women are still going to wear it, is there a safer method?
Well, I think that it was very obvious from the study that was done that if you decrease the frequency of use, then you can decrease your chances. Um, Knowing about your family history, I mean, if your lineage has shown that they are more susceptible to getting cancer, then maybe you want to think twice about getting this relaxer. Um, Lifestyle, just making sure that you keep yourself as healthy as you can.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest problem that we as a society here in America, I don't care if you're Black, white, brown, we all have a problem with making sure that our lifestyle is conducive to keeping ourselves healthy. So making sure you keep that in the forefront. So if
Yeah.
you are going to get a relaxer, say, well, let me make sure that other areas of my life, I don't want to say on the straight and narrow, but taking care of business when it comes to looking after your health. So there are some things that you can proactively do, but I think the most important thing, and I'm always beating this drum, is volunteer to allow us to learn more. And when I say us, it's researchers, scientists who care about what we put on our bodies, in our bodies, what we surround ourselves with, our mental state. I mean, all of this plays a role. So we have to be able to find someone we can trust.
Yeah.
And I mean, I continue to do research. There is the Silent Spring Institute that has an initiative to understand the environmental factors that play into breast cancer. Uh, yeah, so I mean, it's all kind of things that we can do, but we need, in order to get answers and to definitively say that this is an impact, to really understand, we have to share the data.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or information to get data.
Right. It's funny you said less frequently. I don't know if that's gonna be like realistic, because as soon as people start to see a little bit of new growth, then they know for sure that it's time for them to go back to the salon, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's realistic or not, but it's going to be interesting, like you said, Toni, to see how this all unfolds. It really, really is. Yeah. Do you ladies have anything that you would like to talk about that we didn't discuss? Something that has been on your mind, as we started preparing for this conversation? Is there anything you want to add, or anything that, questions you might have, or?
I guess for sure. I think we even spoke on it a little bit when we mentioned the founder of the perm.
Yeah.
I think it was more
Jose Calva.
the one before the black man.
Garrett Morgan.
Garrett Morgan.
Actually, Garrett Morgan is from Cleveland. I'm from Cleveland, and Garrett Morgan's family still lives here in Cleveland. I'm actually friends with his granddaughter.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Cool.
His granddaughter. His granddaughter is employed at Kent State University, and so I taught at Kent State for 15 years, and so she's still there, and she remembers helping her grandfather in his lab when he was making these hair products to go out. She said that he still has some diehard people that still buy this, his products and things that, which is really interesting, right?
Yeah.
But so Madam CJ Walker, of course, popularized Madam CJ Walker, Annie Turbo Malone popularized using the straightening comb.
Mm-hmm.
Garrett Morgan took it to another level by allowing the straightening process to last longer by this tonic that he created to go with the straightening comb. But then in the 1950s is when we got the quote unquote what we know of as the perm.
Perm today.
Yeah.
And I think just to add to the point, like what you just said, like how it did stem from a black man. I think a lot of it, and a lot of people can also say the same thing. I'm sure other black people can say that a lot of the hate that we have towards ourselves stems from our community directly. When we're trying to fixate a problem, or at least should I say, a lot of people, whenever they felt not good enough, or they felt like their skin was too dark, their hair was too coily, they heard it directly from someone that was Black. And of course that the Black hate is not administered like just like we just wake up and we hate ourselves. It's something that is, instilled in our brains. But a lot like that's one prime example that I can say that it definitely stems from hearing it from amongst each other. And we're trying to kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Searching for approval from someone that we might find attractive. Say it's a Black man that a Black woman might find attractive. You're trying to connect to them a little bit better by maybe if I look more European or if I look my curls are a little bit loose, So I see that a lot, and this actually stems a little bit closer to like the dating world and how a lot of Black women have openly stated that it's kind of hard dating Black men. A lot of Black men are shooting for lighter skinned women, white women, and obviously it's not all Black men, and it's not a large majority. So a large majority of Black men do marry and date Black women, but it's something that we see like in media. It's portrayed a lot, and I think that's even another reason why Black women may be stepping back into trying different other hairstyles, because I will say, depending on your hairstyle, it attracts different types of men.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it does.
Curly hair out. I've had, my hair like this. I've had braids. Every time I'm outside with a certain hairstyle, it attracts a very different demographic of men.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think it also hair closely connects to the dating pool and how women want to be seen by the opposite gender or same gender. It's a different time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I thank you for bringing that up, because the fact that you're in the millennial you're millennial, right?
Gen Z.
Gen Z.
Yeah,
okay, yeah. Even better, right? Even better. We have a sister on this podcast that's Gen Z who was talking about the same things that we've been dealing with for centuries.
Yeah.
That has not improved. We as Black people have to make up in our mind that we've had enough. And once we've had enough, that's when things will change.
Exactly.
But we still have this brainwashing to undo. Like
there's a lot.
We have a lot of work to do, but what part of the issue is people don't want to admit that they're brainwashed.
Yeah.
That's the first thing.
Quick question to you guys. So you guys seem very informed on the Black community, like how hair in general operates. Yeah. What exactly was it that shifted from Black, during the Black Panther movie, when everyone was wearing their hair in afros and we were like everyone was natural. What exactly shifted to make women start getting perms or to straighten their hair? What was it? How did we get away from that?
Yeah, the invention of the jerry curl, which started in the late 70s. And then in the late 70s, Black people were now having the opportunity to get into the corporate space.
Okay.
And getting into corporate, you had to go in there looking a certain kind of way, right? And so the jerry curl was like the step that took it from the afro to then permed hair. And so now, let's just say this now, a lot of people, even though what we saw in the media was a lot of Black people wearing wearing afros, there were still a lot of Black people that were still wearing perms, because when perms first came out in the 1950s, they were seen as a status symbol. If you had enough money to go and get your hair permed, then that said something about your status. And so people wanted to, in some ways, upper middle class Black people wanted to fit in that status. So wearing your hair in an afro took you down a couple notches in the economic status. Okay. Yeah. So that's what started everything back up again with Black people, because we had to gain economic power. And the best way that we knew to do that was to begin to, again, acculturate and assimilate.
Gotcha.
Now, it's interesting that you say that, because I'm thinking back to just some questionnaires that were asked when Black women were asked, why they wear their hair a particular way. And those who wore it straight would say, it's better in the corporate world. They would say it was easier to manage. But what was interesting is those who wear their hair natural, they were like, you know what? I'm fighting against the status quo. And they considered themselves to be more radical, and they were proud of that. But with the radical perception comes the threat. So we become more threatened
Oh yeah.
in the corporate setting
Oh
if
yeah.
we portray ourselves in a particular way. So I'm pretty sure that also, you're laughing. But you know what? We can go on and on about that.
Yes, we could.
Like men
Absolutely.
have the same problem with facial hair. They're less
Mhm.
threatened if they don't have facial hair compared to if they do. And
Mhm.
so for us, it's the natural hair thing. We're more radical, more difficult to deal with. And that's not true, but that is the perception.
Absolutely. Wow. Wow. Well, this was a beautiful conversation, and hopefully an eye-opening conversation for those individuals that have been watching and will watch as I get this episode posted. But I would love to be able to connect the audience with you. How can everybody stay connected with you all?
Yes, all my information. I'm Toni Bryanne TV. You can find me on TikTok, on Instagram with Toni Bryanne TV, and also on YouTube. That's my main platform where I do more of these conversations. It kind of dwindles into gets into my TikTok as well, but primarily YouTube for full deep dives, 40-minute plus episodes of just talking about topics of this sort or any topics that affect society and my generation, Gen Z, millennials as a whole, and how we can better ourselves to just evolve. So yeah, Toni Bryanne TV, which is like listed right here underneath my name.
Awesome. So I am a researcher, and so Maine Insights is the name of my company. That's MANEINSIGHTS. So maineinsights.com is my website. I also have a number of videos on the Our Black Hair Matters platform on YouTube. And so if you go to Our Black Hair Matters, you can see me talking and interviewing other people, but talking about why our Black hair matters. So you can go to YouTube and find information there as well.
Yeah. Dr. Crystal, can you talk a little bit about the association that you just founded
Yeah.
with some of your colleagues?
Yeah, so just recently I founded the Association of Professional Trichologists. And for those of you who don't know what a trichologist is, it is a professional who study diseases of the hair and scalp. And so we are looking to have key stakeholders in the industry. So not only trichologists, but also dermatologists, cosmetologists, even those who are in the beauty industry to come on board because it is important for us to build an ecosystem of knowledge and to share because I think we all stay in our little silos and it's important for us to share in order to elevate the industry.
Yeah.
And so what the association does is provide resources so that trichologists can get what they need to become successful and to help those who suffer with hair and scalp ailments.
Wow. Well, I will make sure that I put you all's information in the show notes so that everybody can stay connected with you. I just want to say thanks for spending some time with me. Thank you, Toni. I'm so happy to, be able to have you come on. And she's like rocking and rolling on her platform, has all of these subscribers, coming to watch her speak about various topics. So please follow Toni. And it was such a pleasure to talk with you again, Dr. Porter. And I can't wait to see you in January.
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes, yes, yes.
Thank you
So,
so much for having me on here. I
yes.
definitely enjoyed having the conversation. I learned a lot. So
Oh,
thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful night, ladies.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so this is the part of the episode where I give a little bit of information about the research that went into preparing for this episode. As a scholar, as a researcher, I think it's really important for me to always provide some resources for you all. So I'm going to put a couple top titles on the screen, and you all will be able to see them. So I read an article called Thousands of Black Women Claim Hair Relaxers Gave Them Cancer. This is an article that came out from Reuters, which is a European publication. They have a publication that's like a newsletter. They have blogs. They also have a podcast. They did a whole show podcast about hair relaxers and cancer. So it's really, really important that we get connected, stay informed. And then I have this other one, a rite of passage for many Black girls and women now raise Deep Suspicions by Janelle Griffin, who writes for NBC News. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these articles that I read. And so there's an article by the Global Cosmetic Industry. It was published on November 15th, 2023. So this was just a few days ago. Discussed the fact that cancer lawsuits for more than 8,000 women will move forward. There is now a master complaint that has been filed, which means a master complaint means that all of the lawsuits have now been combined and consolidated into one big lawsuit. And now this particular complaint or lawsuit is now housed in the Northern District of Illinois in Chicago by the Judicial Panel on Multi-District Litigation. The case is assigned to U.S. District Judge Mary M. Rowland. So Judge Rowland is the person that's now in charge of hearing these cases about the hair relaxers that Black women have come forward with. Another article, like I said, the NBC article, Rites of Passage for Many Black Girls and Women Now Raise Deep Suspicions, talks about a lawyer by the name of Danielle Ward Mason, who is also representing thousands of women who claim that 90%, she claims that 90% of her clients that she is representing in this relaxer lawsuit has had a hysterectomy or has had a surgery to remove tumors or fibroids. So these are topics that we need to continue to be abreast of, continue to educate ourselves about this. And you know what? And unfortunately, I'm just going to say this, unfortunately, even if more data comes out, more research comes out that proves hair relaxers cause cancer or cause some bodily harm, we already know that it causes some topical bodily harm, right? But even if data comes out that states that these relaxers cause internal bodily harm, Black women are still going to use them. They're still going to be on the market. When we think about things like cigarettes, we know smoking cigarettes cause cancer, but people still smoke cigarettes anyway, right? So just like the cigarettes, the relaxers are not going to be going anywhere. Women are still going to continue to straighten their hair, even if they know that there's a risk in getting cancer behind it. And y'all know, if you've been watching me and you've been following me, if you've read any of my books, you know where I stand. In a Dr. Tameka Ellington world, everybody would be natural. But that's just not the case. I love my natural hair, and I really wish that more women loved their natural hair and were willing to fight for the right to wear their natural hair. And so I'm going to get off my soapbox, but y'all know where I stand. I love natural hair. But this episode of the Black Beauty Activist podcast was brought to you by Black Hair in a White World. I am still on tour with this book. The tour has been so much fun. I've gone all over, and in January, I'll be in Chicago and then going to Minneapolis. And then in February, I'll be in Boston and then back into Cleveland. The Cleveland Public Library, they're going to be hosting a hair summit, and they want me to MC and keynote at that summit. So this tour has been so much fun. I've met so many people, and I look forward to meeting others. And if your university organization is looking for someone to come and speak about beauty discrimination or topics similar to that, diversity, equity, and inclusion topics, please hit me up. You can reach me on my website, drtamekaellington.com. Doctor is DR, no period, Tameka, Tameka, Ellington, ELLINGTON.com. And then go to the contact form. There on that contact form, you can fill that out, get some information to me, and we can start a conversation on how I might be able to come and serve your organization. And so I just want to say thank you for listening. I so appreciate you all coming on. being active participants. I see that the comments have been going, and I'm going to definitely reach out to you all after the close of this episode. But if you enjoyed listening to the Black Beauty Activist podcast, please leave a comment on YouTube. Please share it with your circles who will benefit. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel, the Black Beauty Activist Podcast. Did you know that you can also enjoy this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts? So if you go on whichever platform you like and type in the Black Beauty Activist Podcast, it will come up. My voice will come up, and all the amazing conversations that I've been able to have over the past year. Please, please, please always remember that on the other side of fear is your beautiful confidence. Peace and blessings, everybody.